To speak about learning to move again, to begin again, a move to learning how to speak again, to dance again. I dance to dance, This is how it begins. At Place Saint-Henri, we crossed the railway tracks and she said, "This is where the poem begins," and I wore a borrowed nostalgia at my throat. She passed Montreal to me that night across the table, a spruce beer between us, Kilner cap and coffee. My untimely Dynabooth confession incongruous as I unspooled myself and offered her the history that obscures me. In that city, I took a dance class for the first time in 8 years or 9. I stopped a year before I really stopped. I broke that fall a year before I fell. The dance class was in French and no one knew I was embarrassed to be English, so I was careful not to speak when I was breathless in case they found my accent out. I mistranslated body parts, the names of things, and danced always a mistranslation, twisting wrists when the word was for shoulder and I knew it, and I still can't remember the word for wrist. Épaule stays with me. I was badly transposed, body and tongue, in a room of other languages. I did understand that she told me repeatedly that I was too stiff. And I reminded myself that I was utterly petrified. To get up, getting up, she was getting up when maybe she falls down again or sits suddenly and heavily back in the chair, which is much bigger than she is but does not take up so much space in the room. She learns the room as she learns the dance. She moves the furniture daily. This is the first ritual, the ready-making. The carpet is stained under the rug, but she's tripped on it before and doesn't need another reason to. This is how it begins. This is how it begins. In a library in Montreal, I searched the shelves for words to bring the bodies dancing down. I couldn't dance myself. I learnt in that city it is not the body that makes the dance, it is the space. And I was altogether too nomadic to have a space to make myself. Those rooms weren't my own, and it takes time to make privacy of a place. Not there, not yet. And I didn't want to watch other bodies, because frustration set into my still limbs and left me only symptomed and strange, sitting at a desk looking body blind at dance diluted on a screen. That makes a marionette of me, but the strings tangled and knotted, and so I only twitch and thrum. Among Trisha Brown accumulations, Water Motor, transcriptions of Meredith Monk, scores of inner voices, I moved through those decades and stumbled upon Yvonne Rainer. A milestone, a turning point, a signal. So many words of movement and momentum and weight. The heaviness of significance, the stopping and then the spurring, the turning, the hold and swing, thrust, launch of pivots. And so it happened that I read the dance before I ever saw it. The right and left leg persisted, with delight, bearing no relation to her. A nostalgia disconcerts her. This is how it begins. You can see her sometimes, reading or dancing indeterminately. There is no smallness to the process of reading, and she doesn't sit still. There is a study to each movement. Eating, bulking at the words on the page, gagging, spitting sometimes. She reels as she reads and coughs sometimes to break the quietness expected of her. Text, grammar, signs, steps, gesture, mimes, all require translation, interpretation, embodiment. A giving breath and body to what is otherwise caught unmediated, the purgatory of an unread text, a bodiless dance, indistinguishable. Or perhaps, to begin with a moment of stopping, an instance of stillness, starting with stagnancy. To begin by going backwards. Coincidence leads me to an empty pool in this city only months before I arrived in the snow. A performance of Trio A, but by another body. I shadow her. It is through this other body that I come to learn about transmission. Trio A has a history of teaching, of being taught. There are 5 transmitters, taught by Raina herself and equipped with all the tools to carry on the teaching. I recognize transmission. It resonates. At first she wants to talk. She opens up a small mouth for dialogue, which my enthusiasm fills entirely, immediately, and I make suggestions perhaps too hurriedly, but no matter, because I have misunderstood, and nothing can bridge the cavern opened up by my ravenous incomprehension. Communication ceases when this transmitter learns of my fumbled learning. Learning is by Laban, or by certified transmission only. She says, not to discourage you, and I circle certain words and am wholly discouraged and furied. I am beside myself. I am primarily falling. She is assembling and dismantling herself, mapping her body choreographically, naming muscles in contortions, the shapes her body sounds, assigned through tug and flinch, stretch and pull, twist, lean, tracing small occurrences over her skin, her body's slow progress through the dull days, the haze on her, and she pale as a thumb underneath. There is a momentum to memory as this learning, this stealing settles in her. Here the thievery begins, the dance diseased in her. Fräulein Anna O fell ill at the age of 21. The present, spoken incessantly, falls, manifest, paralyzing, until a passion that would not heal was going on inside her. Absurd to me to finger the rucked fabric of the telling, noised and nonsensical, ravelling, unravelling, and grope the given alphabet there. Sometimes I want to kneel, wolf low to the ground, and with my other slung mouth throat instead the animal cry there. Sometimes I want to shriek, noise opened, not made, but I don't. I am 23, remembering being 15, remembering being 8. Ways of stopping. Momentary distractions, say a door ajar or spurious punctuation, fraction lapse in concentration, the skin of the heel on the concrete, weight unmediated, incurable, loss of balance or control, slowing, naturally drawing to a close, or loss of momentum so pronounced, unwinding, unravelling until stillness supersedes. An intrusion, say a kind of textual nostalgia or the call of other voices, a mistake, correction, readjustment, reflection, a decision, the assertion of mind over matter, fatigue as in a lull, a dip, exhaustion, abandonment, fear, being petrified, terror-rigid, panic-ridden, stupefied, dumbfounded, dreads hands over the skin crawling, stiffening, doubt as inconsistency or frayed nerves or gutlessness, embarrassment causing a receding and internalizing, a turning away from, or a blush, the interruption of violence in 2 parts. 1. Interruption interred, a stitch or a snap or a masochism, thirst, a strain, tendon slack, untwisting or bruise, bone heavy and breaking, an injury, bodily malfunction or like a kink, a chink, something swallowed, collapsing. 2. Interruption imposed, fright, a noise or a feeling stealing upon, a hood pulled down, thrown light on a pale wall, impact, a clouting or collision, the bumping of uncouth bodies or a hostile dialogue between a body and... From here the room seems to be falling apart. This is how it begins. Place Saint-Henri, we crossed the railway track, and I searched the shelves for words to bring the bodies dancing down. I was careful not to speak when I was breathless, and she said, "This is where the poem begins." And I wore a borrowed nostalgia at my throat. The carpet is stained under the rug, but she's tripped on it before and doesn't need another reason to. The crease of the crook of an elbow, a jawline, jarring, ball joints, thighs, scooping. Maybe she falls down again or sits suddenly and heavily back in the chair, which is much bigger than she is, but does not take up so much space in the room. Fatigue is in a lull, a dip, abandonment, exhaustion. My untimely diner booth confession incongruous as I unspooled myself, and she says, "Not to discourage you." And I circle certain words and I'm wholly discouraged and furied. Indistinguishable. An intrusion, say a kind of textual nostalgia or the call of other voices. Eating, balking at the words on the page, gagging, spitting sometimes. Nothing can bridge the cavern opened up by my ravenous incomprehension. Here the thievery begins. Doubt as inconsistency or frayed nerves or gutlessness, embarrassment causing a receding and internalizing, a turning away from, or a blush. I stopped a year before I really stopped. I broke that fall a year before I fell. Witlessly she has brought time's beggars, memories across the threshold, and the past tense begins to make itself known like fallen snow. A ball stays with me, interruption interred, burst, a strain, tendon slack, a mistranslated body parts, a stitch or a snap, the names of things, bodily malfunctional like a kink, a chink, something swallowed, collapsing. That makes a marionette of me, but the strings tangled and knotted, and so I only twitch and thrum. To get up, getting up, she was getting up when... Momentary distractions, say a door ajar or spurious punctuation, fraction lapse in concentration, the skin of the heel on the concrete, twisting wrists when the word was for shoulder and I knew it, and I still can't remember the word for wrist. Interruption imposed, impact, a clouting or collision, bumping of uncouth bodies or a hostile dialogue between a body and... This is how it begins.